Vladimir Putin is not preparing for peace. He's preparing for war. While the world watches as Donald Trump prepares to meet Putin in Alaska this Friday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy just dropped a bombshell that changes everything we thought we knew about this historic summit. The meeting between Trump and Putin is set to take place in Alaska, marking Putin's first visit to American soil in a decade.
Days away. Here with me now is the United States Ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for being here. First, I want to just state the obvious, which is that there is a key player currently not slated to be in Alaska, and that is the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Is it possible he will attend?
Yeah, I certainly think it's possible, and it's good to be with you this morning. Certainly there can't be a deal.
This isn't just any diplomatic encounter. It represents a dramatic shift in how the West approaches Russia, especially given that Putin faces charges from the International Criminal Court for war crimes. But according to Ukrainian intelligence, Putin isn't getting ready for a ceasefire. He's mobilizing for new offensive operations, even as diplomatic overtures continue to unfold.
Президент Трамп мені так говорив, і я це абсолютно підтримую. Третє. Я ще не чув, що будь-хто з партнерів засумнівався в можливості Америки зробити так, щоб війни не було. Президент Сполучених Штатів має важелі, має рішучість. Україна підтримала всі пропозиції президента Трампа, починаючи ще від лютого. Припинення вогню. Всі формати підтримали. Зустрічі з російською стороною ми забезпечили. І забезпечили конструктивно. Ми зробили обміни і готуємо наступні.
Zelenskyy revealed that intelligence reports and military commanders have detected Russian forces repositioning and redeploying in ways that suggest preparations for renewed attacks, not peace negotiations. If someone is preparing for peace, this is not what they do. Trump has expressed confidence that he'll know within the first 2 minutes of meeting Putin whether a deal can be made. He's described this as a feel-out meeting where he'll tell Putin directly that the war must end. Trump believes he can assess within minutes whether peace is actually possible, but this confidence might be dangerously misplaced.
It's the worst thing that's happened, by far the worst that's happened since World War II. So I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin, and I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war, you got to end it. We're going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made.
How will you know that?
Because that's what I do. I make deals.
The territorial question has become a central sticking point. Trump has suggested that there could be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both sides. When pressed about these potential concessions, Trump expressed frustration with Zelenskyy's statement about needing constitutional approval for any territorial changes.
A meeting set up between the two leaders. I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelenskyy was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap because there'll be some land swapping going on. I know that through Russia and through conversations with everybody to the good, for the good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad. But it's very complex because you have lines that are very uneven. And there'll be some swapping. There'll be some changes in land. And the word that they will use is, they make changes. We're going to change the lines, the battle lines. Russia's occupied a big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine. But they've taken some very prime territory.
He finds it contradictory that Ukraine has approval to wage war, but claims to need additional authorization for negotiating peace terms. The human cost of this conflict weighs heavily on ordinary Ukrainians. At a soldier's funeral in Kiev, a grieving mother captured the impossible dilemma facing her nation. She acknowledged that while Ukraine cannot currently recapture all its territories, they could consider an agreement to prevent more deaths, but not at the cost of surrendering our sovereignty.
On a bright Kiev morning, another Ukrainian soldier is laid to rest. As his widow looks on, his mother reflects on the difficult situation the country finds itself in and the sacrifices it is being asked to make for peace.
Right now, we don't have the opportunity to recapture our territories. But to prevent people from dying, we could sign some kind of agreement, but not give up our territories. Not agree that we are giving the captured territories to Russia.
This mother's words reflect the agonizing balance between saving lives and preserving national integrity. Zelenskyy has been unequivocal about Ukraine's position in these negotiations. The path to peace must include Ukraine at every step.
The path to peace for Ukraine must be determined together and only together with Ukraine. This is fundamental, and it's important that our joint approach and shared vision work towards real peace, a consolidated position, a ceasefire.
He insists that nothing about Ukraine can be decided without Ukraine's participation, emphasizing that any lasting peace requires a consolidated position and shared vision. What makes Putin's apparent strategy even more cynical is how he's orchestrating this summit. Experts have noted that Putin is deliberately sidelining European allies and Ukraine itself, trying to make this a bilateral negotiation between two major powers. He wants to carve up Ukraine like a real estate deal while presenting himself as Trump's equal on the world stage. This approach gives Putin a diplomatic victory while Ukraine bleeds on the battlefield.
Of preparation, the president going through a kind of murder board of options. Trump obviously likes to just do things spontaneously. I mean, you mentioned what's going to happen in the room with Vladimir Putin. I spent 3 hours in an interview with Vladimir Putin in 2006. He can talk for 90 minutes about the history of the Russian Orthodox Church or the history of Ukraine. So the idea, as Mike says, is Putin going to jam Trump? 100% he's going to jam Trump. And that becomes much, much easier when you don't have a plan yourself. I mean, our two guests have already talked about, we don't know where the meeting is. We don't know who's attending the meeting. That's a recipe for a potential disaster. I know President Trump feels like that he can tap dance his way to victory, but he's already handed Vladimir Putin a victory. Vladimir Putin is a war criminal, according to the International Criminal Court. He's not allowed to go into most countries in the world, and yet Donald Trump has invited him to Alaska. By the way, a piece of land which the United States bought from Russia in 1867, just to add to the irony.
So to the point of the location, I was wondering, it's the U.S., yes, it's inviting Putin to this country, but it's President Trump's home turf. Does that give Trump the upper hand?
The specter of past Trump-Putin meetings looms large over this summit. Remember the 2018 Helsinki meeting where Trump sided with Putin over U.S. intelligence agencies? Trump stood next to Putin and declared that the Russian president was extremely strong and powerful in his denial of Russian interference.
Extremely strong and powerful, talking about Putin, over the intelligence committee, the U.S. intelligence committee. But regardless of that, it's the general fear that Trump could get played by Putin.
Yes, of course. And this is kind of the all-over fear that everyone, even close to Donald Trump, will have because of the fact you have him surrounded by people like Marco Rubio, like J.D. Vance, who do believe that Putin is a master manipulator and that he is trying to manipulate this situation too. Now, I will say we are in a slightly different situation.
That moment raised serious concerns about Trump's susceptibility to Putin's manipulation. Putin's refusal to meet directly with Zelenskyy reveals his true intentions. He doesn't recognize Ukraine as a sovereign nation or Zelenskyy as a legitimate president. Putin prefers to leave Zelenskyy hanging as what he considers a rogue figure, with plans to eventually replace him with a Russia-friendly leader. By waiting out the current Ukrainian government, Putin believes he can install a more compliant leadership.
Russians have so far shrugged off that idea. Why would Putin be so reluctant to meet Zelenskyy directly?
Oh, there are a number of reasons, but I think that, a couple major ones. If Putin sits down with Zelenskyy, it is recognizing him as the leader of another country. And Putin, number one, doesn't consider Ukraine an independent sovereign nation. And he certainly doesn't consider Zelenskyy a legal president. And the Russians explain that by saying, he's been in power even after he was supposed to leave power because, he has never been re-elected. Now, according to the Constitution and according to what's happening in Ukraine, they have martial law right now. So according to martial law, you can't have an election. But so the Russians are saying he's not even legitimate.
The stakes of Friday's meeting couldn't be higher. Putin has shown little sign of pulling back from maximalist demands that include ending Ukraine's NATO ambitions, Ukraine's disarmament, and Kyiv formally ceding all land claimed by Russian forces. These aren't negotiating positions, they're demands for Ukraine's effective surrender as a sovereign state. European leaders have issued strong warnings about the summit. 26 heads of state stressed that a just and lasting peace must respect international law, including the principles of independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. They insist that international borders must not be changed by force. EU policy chief Kaja Kallas was even more direct, stating that without Russia agreeing to a full and unconditional ceasefire, there should be no discussion of concessions. The military situation on the ground supports Ukraine's concerns. Russian troops recently broke through north of Pokrovsk, advancing at least 6 miles and potentially driving a wedge between key Ukrainian defensive positions. Ukraine's military spokesperson confirmed that Russia is moving units in the Zaporizhzhia region for further assaults. These aren't the actions of an army preparing for peace. Some analysts suggest that both Trump and Putin want to appear tough while searching for a deal. The question is whether Trump has the leverage, offering Putin a fifth of Ukraine, freedom from war crimes accountability, and potential sanctions relief, and whether he'll actually use it to Ukraine's advantage.
A lot, but I think that is sort of, the fact of the meeting matters a lot to each one of them, because they try to sort of show to the world that they're the top guy. But for us, let alone for Ukraine, it doesn't matter that much. What matters is calculus. Did the calculus of Putin change? Trump showed the resolve, and this now newly united and newly generous NATO stands firmly behind Ukraine. That's an important factor. This threat of sanctions, secondary sanctions of those countries who still consume Russian energy, that's important. But also the previous willingness of Trump to put pressure on Ukraine, right? This package might be of interest to Putin. If it is, this could be a productive meeting. If it isn't, it will be, either the continue sort of the repeat of their failed meeting in Helsinki during Trump's first term, where Putin just pulled Trump into believing Russian talking points, or it would be if they try to show who is the top guy sort of live on air.
But history suggests Putin will use any concession as an opportunity to regroup and attack again. Zelensky's warning about Putin's deception carries the weight of bitter experience. In 2019, Zelensky negotiated a ceasefire with Putin alongside French President Macron and German Chancellor Merkel. Putin later violated both the ceasefire and an agreed-upon prisoner exchange. This pattern of using negotiations as cover for military preparations is Putin's established playbook. As Trump prepares for what could be one of the most consequential diplomatic meetings of his presidency, the evidence suggests he's walking into a carefully orchestrated trap. Putin isn't coming to Alaska to make peace. He's coming to secure diplomatic cover for his next offensive. The Ukrainian intelligence is clear. While Putin talks peace, his forces prepare for war. The world will be watching on Friday, but we might be witnessing Putin's most elaborate deception yet. If Zelensky is right, the Alaska summit won't end the war. It will give Putin exactly what he needs to escalate it. The question isn't whether Putin wants peace. It's whether Trump will recognize the deception before it's too late.